Hello Year 9, this is Mrs Chappell, and I just wanted to talk you through what GCSE History could look like for you. So at GCSE History, we study the Edexcel exam board, and with that you study 4 different units. So we look at medicine through time, we will look at the American West, we would look at Elizabethan England, and also Nazi Germany. I'm just going to run through some of those in a bit more detail so you get a bit of an understanding about them. The first one we study is our thematic study. This is looking at medicine in Britain, which runs from the medieval time right the way through to modern day. And then it has what we call a historic environment, where we look at detail the British sector of the Western Front from 1914 to 1918, where we look at different injuries and treatments, life in the trenches, that kind of thing. So this is a really, long, varied unit where we look at different types of medicine. So looking in 3 different areas, so surgery, cause of disease and treatment, and public health, all the way through to modern day. And with the Western front, we look at things like new discoveries, such as penicillin and x-rays, and what sort of health problems there were associated with the trenches and dangers of things like evacuation from the trenches as well. The second unit we will look at is the Elizabethan England, which, even though Elizabeth reigned from 1558 to 1603, we actually do 1558 to 1588, which is at the end of the Spanish Armada. So here we look at things like Elizabethan Parliament, we look at difficulties of being a female ruler, her ministers, problems when she came to the throne in 1558, all of those different things. And then we look at life in Elizabethan England. So why is it seen as a golden age? The birth of kind of Renaissance art and architecture. And then we look at things like poverty, so what poverty was looking like in Elizabethan England, as well as trade and exploration, so going out to the Americas and the impact that that had. And then finally, we look at troubles at home and abroad, where we look at the constant sort of issues and rivalries surrounding the Catholicism and Protestantism, leading to many rebellions, as well as issues such as Mary Queen of Scots, and then eventually finishing with our Spanish Armada. So that is our British depth study. Then the next one we do is a period study, which is the American West. And this is looking at the early settlement of the West, so life of your Native Americans, early migration, impact of things like manifest destiny, and then that conflict and tension that arrives from these new settlers against the Native Americans. We then look at the development of the plains, so things like the railroads, we look at cowboys and Indians, homesteaders, but then the impact of all of these things coming onto the plains and how that has a huge impact on the natives' way of life. We then look at the later developments, so we look at changes in the way of farming, so technological advancements that help them with farming, things like barbed wire, ploughs, that kind of thing. Then we look at problems with law and order. So why was it so lawless out in the West? And then finally, we look at how the American government decided to deal with what they referred to as the Indian problem, so the removal of the natives from the land. The final bit we look at is a modern depth study, and that is looking at Weimar and Nazi Germany. So from here, we look at after World War I. So we're looking at 1918, going right through to 1945. So here we see the impact of World War I, the impact of the Treaty of Versailles. We look at the Weimar Republic and some of the problems that emerged from there. We look at changes in the standard of living, such as new art and architecture coming out of Germany at this time. We then move into the problems of the Weimar government, looking at things like hyperinflation, issues surrounding Germany at this point, and how Hitler was then able to capitalise on this and rise to power. So then we look at problems within Germany, growth of the Nazi Party, the fear of communism that was sweeping throughout Europe at this time, all that helped Hitler gain power. We then look at his control and dictatorships, things like propaganda, the role of Gestapo and SS, and then look at opposition and resistance that did exist within Germany. And the final part of that unit, we look at life in Nazi Germany and policy towards women, young people, persecution of minorities, and things like the Holocaust. So there's many different styles of learning that we use within history. We do lots of sort of note-taking and writing. There's lots of reading and highlighting, imagery. We use lots of different techniques within the lessons in order to help you not only embed the knowledge, but also learn the skill that's needed. So exam questions are it's really heavy on the writing with this one. And that's not something that I don't want to make any apologies for that, because it's really important to learn to write well. So if you love writing, this is definitely the subject for you. It's lots of heavy essays that go along alongside the different topics that we do. So on this slide here, we've got some examples of an exam question, an 8-mark exam question that we would be doing within this exam board. Although there is lots of writing, we do have lots of things to help you with your writing. We use structure strips, we use writing frames. So even though it is an essay-based subject, we do have lots of things in place to make it very accessible. We use techniques like dual coding to help with memory as well. So you can see an example there of different images to help people remember how penicillin was mass produced. When it comes to examinations, there are 3 papers that you sit. So one will be on the medicine paper, and that would be 1 hour and 20 minutes and 30%. Your paper 2 would be a combination of American West and Elizabethan England, which would be 1 hour and 50 minutes. And then your 3rd paper would be your modern depth, which would be Nazi Germany, which is 1 hour and 20 minutes and then another 30%. All those exams will be sat at the end of the 2 years in the summer. Now, history is an excellent GCSE to help you go into many different A-level courses, obviously one being A-level history that we run. But as well as that, history is fantastic for loads of different careers that you can go into. So lots of people use history. It's a very highly regarded subject, and it is used lots in things like law and journalism. If you want to go in to be like researchers and psychologists, archaeologists, even our top economists, some of our big earners in the UK come from a history background. And that's because of the idea of being able to analyse and interpret data and all of those different things. But really, the good thing about history is it's not going to close any doors to you. You really could go on to any career at all with it. Now, if you have any questions, please do speak to your teachers in your lessons, but also feel free to email me at charlie.chappell@budehaven.cornwall.sch.uk. Thank you very much, Year 9.